Yes, ask a question to our audience.
Well, ask a question. Ask your question away.
All right, well, let's give the introduction. Here we are, Talking Niagara. Welcome, everybody, to Talking Niagara. And I have a question. I don't think Pierre Trudeau will be the leader of the Liberal Party at the time of the election. I think his numbers are so bad that he'll have to step down. He'll have to make the decision of stepping down if he wants his party to have a chance in the next election, from what I see in all the polls right now. So when do you think, if you think out there, when do you think he'll drop out? August or September? I'm thinking August. But if he can't leave that decision too late. And there's Metaphysical Mike. When do you think Trudeau will drop out? Because right now his party's doing very bad and doing worse. The budget didn't help them. He doesn't seem to have too much. He's begun to try to attack Poilievre, but it hasn't really worked so far. So they have said that by July they want to turn everything back. Like the Conservatives are 20 points ahead of them, and the Liberals want to regain at least 5 of those points by July. If they don't achieve that, even if they do you think Trudeau is going to stay in the party helm? He might have to get out. What do you think? I'm thinking August, September, he'll have to step down. We could have a poll. We could have that kind of a thing.
Well, okay, that's a very interesting question, because he's actually in much of our news today. So I'd certainly love to hear that. Right?
Yeah, his image is contradictory here today in the news, as it usually is. But normally there is lots of negativity addressed to Trudeau and the Liberals. I think he may have to, because the attacks of the opposition are mostly aimed at him, and I think that they might have to change the leader of the party if they think they're going to get anywhere. They don't want to be obliterated like the Conservatives were when they were knocked down to 2 or 3 seats back after Mulroney.
Okay, here we go. Laurie Parliament has said, I think he's too arrogant to step down.
Possibly, but he's got a whole party pushing, and there's lots of murmurs in the background. The knives are out, I think, and it's just a matter of when it happens. He's going to say "Et tu, Freeland," basically when.
Yeah, but you see, here's the thing: does Freeland automatically take over, or would there be an election? Would there be an election within the Liberal caucus?
That's how it works. You have to have a leadership caucus of some kind, or a leadership election.
Yeah, exactly. So Freeland would only be, she might be a candidate, but she's possibly the most likely candidate.
Remember, our one and only female prime minister was Kim Campbell, and she was like prime minister for 5 minutes. And that's when Mulroney could see that his own personal popularity was so terrible that he had to make a runner. However, he left it too late. And by the time the election came, they were completely wiped out. Hi, Angela. How you doing? And so they were completely wiped out. So when Mulroney became extremely unpopular, he left it too late to pull a pin, and he handed things over to Kim Campbell, and she took a massive shellacking.
Yeah. Okay. That's a fair question. It's been one I've been mulling for a while, probably the last 6, probably 3 or 4 times in the last 6 months, I have to say. And the trouble is with that, of course, is putting how you feel about what Justin Trudeau or the Liberals are doing individually. The question really becomes one of that. If you're going to change the leadership, that has to be done sooner rather than later.
Yes, and that's why I'm thinking September at the latest.
Yeah, there has to,
But as Lori says, I don't think Trudeau has enough arrogance. He can't understand why people don't love him. I mean, the first 5 years in office, everybody said, "Oh, what a wonderful guy," but that's because he went around the world saying exactly the things you want somebody to say. It's easy to say, but hard to do.
There you go. There's my comment.
I think it's end of August or September. I think that's probably when you'll see him drop out.
Yeah. I made the comment that I think Justin will not drop out. He thinks he's invincible.
Well, if they have a few weapons against Poilievre, they're going to be digging a lot of for a lot of garbage and for a lot of. They've already put the Alex Jones thing out there, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But they're trying to associate Poilievre with Alex Jones, the nut job of Talking Radio, who denied the Sandy Hook massacre, thought it was a big conspiracy. Apparently he has terrible mental health issues, which would explain a lot of that. That means Alex Jones, not Poilievre. But I don't see they will try to make associations with Poilievre and the far right extremists. I don't think that'll work. Poilievre have to be careful though. We don't want he doesn't want any of that to lock in on him. I think he's going to be probably a pretty moderate conservative leader all in all. But he still has to court the religious sector and all the other traditional sectors that follow the conservatives. He can't lose those votes, just like the liberals have to court the more extreme progressives. Now, Freeland and Mike Cushman says Freeland and Trudeau are at Dale's Carnegie of politicians, are the Dale Carnegie. Everything is positive, nothing is negative. Yes, make friends. How to be successful and make friends. Yes, they are kind of like, I think it's more like the new age sensitive guy, you can only say positive, wonderful things,
And Angela disagrees with you. She says Poilievre is further to the right.
I'm not so sure of that, because too far to the right will start losing him the support that he's starting to gain in Metro Toronto and stuff like that. And to tell you the truth, in my own opinion, too far to the right or too far to the left becomes ungovernable. The policies are ideal based instead of practical based, and it seems to me that Poilievre essentially is more of a practical guy. But we'll see. We'll see after he wins, and if he wins, if he starts wearing jackboots or something into the Parliament, we'll know.
Well, the interesting thing is, pretty much the way I look at the last election and the development of the last election, and basically he needs to start to turn the Greater Toronto area from red to blue in the federal election if he's going to make the inroads he needs. That is pretty well where he needs to actually make up ground, because the Conservatives did do changes outside of the GTA, but largely the GTA is the one area that at the last election remained pretty well unchanged. There's a few went from Liberal, funnily enough, to NDP, but not Conservative.
Yes, I have a feeling that the GTA is going to turn quite blue. Actually, he really made noises about cuts. Yeah, but really, when you're a country extremely in debt, how else are you going to make up? You have to do some cuts, and I don't know where you're going to cut, but every government does that. Liberal, NDP, or conservative. Eventually, they start cutting because they have overspent, and I imagine the conservatives are going to overspend when they get in too, because they have to satisfy their base, just like the Liberals and NDP have to satisfy theirs. Mike says, "Hey, why don't we elect Tories after the Liberals, then elect Liberals after the Tories, and never learn They both have destroyed our country together. We need a change. Well, I think we need a whole, whether the whole Western society needs a different kind of a party system, or a different kind of parties, more based on reality rather than idealism. And right now, particularly in places like the States, it's impossible to separate you from your campaign contributors.
Well, part of the problem that you've got here is political parties are part of the problem. It's the actual political parties, in my view, that have actually caused the problem, because political parties in our modern era, and it exists in the challenge exists in most democracies, whether you're talking about Canada, Britain, Australia, France, Germany. The problem exists in most countries that we have parties that will give up policy in order to attain power. Power matters more than policy. Policy is what you get elected on. Policy is what you abandon as soon as you're elected. Power is what you want, and only power.
Well, I mean, that's a kind of a dark way of looking at it, and yeah, I get it, but there are politicians that get elected because they want to change things and they want things to progress in a positive way. To have all the politicians you elected part of this party, part of this idea of getting power and for the sake of power, I'm not so sure. If you ran for elected office, or I elected, or Angela, or Mike, whoever's listening today, they will not. You go there not with the idea of holding power for power's sake. You get there because you get the power from becoming elected, then to do your mandate, try to change things in a positive way. The problem is, how do you then do that? Because now you have had people help you get to power. You've had lobbyists, and you've had big money behind you somewhere along the line, and you owe favors, and you have to, in order to keep the power you want, you're going to have to oblige those people that help to get you into power. And then after that, maybe then you can follow your ideals. Angela says, I vote on policies, not personalities.
And she also says people have to remember why we voted Harper out in droves back in 2015.
Well, the same thing's going to happen to evidently, it's going to happen to Trudeau now. Yeah.
So, in fact, actually, I think in any individual prime minister, I think only few ever make it beyond the 10-year mark.
Very few. I think, somebody like Pierre Trudeau, he had quite a long run. And Maggie Thatcher, I think she went 12 years. Thatcher.
She actually had 11.
Okay, 11.
11, yeah. 11, maybe 11 and a half, but yeah.
Yeah, so she was, I read one where she was bumping up against 12 years.
So but again, the problem is not politics. The problem is taking money away from those who wanted change, but want that change given up to others, says Randy West.
Another good comment by Randy. Poilievre, here's Angela again. Poilievre is part of some of Harper's scandals. Yes, sure. But Trudeau himself has been part of the scandals that the Liberals had prior to that. So where you see what I mean? It's just one big circle.
Well, that's
I think the best place to do is step back and be indifferent to the personalities, and as Angela says, she will vote on policy. However, you really have to research that policy, and it sounds really good. If the government comes on and says, "Oh, we're going to give you $1 million, everyone," okay, you're going to get my vote. But where's that $1 million going to come from?
But here's a question, right, Dave? So if you were to start collecting right now party policy pamphlets, and they were in the colors, and they were published on paper that there was the colors of the political party in question, and if you were to pile them in 3 piles, I want this, I don't want this, and I don't care about this. Essentially, probably the piles will be equal sized, and you will find during those piles in the I want this pile, you'll find blue leaflets, red leaflets, orange pieces, green pieces, purple pieces, and etc pieces of all the parties in equal proportions. And you'll find the same in the no pile, right? And you'll find the same in the I don't care pile. But let's say that you look at the pile that says I care about this, right? That's the pile where, if you were to look at it theoretically, if you were to count the number of slips in there, and you were to say, hey, there was 12 blue slips, 9 red slips, and 17 yellow slips, then I should be voting NDP.
Well, yeah, that's the way to do it. But how many people are going to do that?
Yeah.
And I think once you then sort out the different ideas, then you look at them and say, "This is a good idea. Is it practical? Can it be done?"
Well, that's the next question.
I think idealism is it should be very much secondary to practicality in politics. First of all, you have to take care of your citizens. You have to build the roads. You have to pull the sewers in. You have to make the country defensible. You have to cut trade deals with other countries. And then you have to go around and say that, think about the ideals that you might want to pursue. And remember, something's wrong with our politics today. The conservatives in Ontario are the ones that brought in public health care. The conservatives, right? Because they thought it was a good idea. That is a new Democrat idea introduced by the New Democrats. But in Ontario, the conservatives were the ones that introduced it and put it into put in OHIP. That is what politics really should be. Okay, this is a good idea. We should do this for. I mean, it's totally against our normal ideology, but we can see that it will benefit the citizens of Ontario, so we'll do it. You can't have anybody do that nowadays in politics. They are so rigidly conformed to their tribe that they can't move. Bill Davis is worlds away from today's conservatives. Yes, unfortunately, but so are the liberals. They can't move. They're into ideological wonderland. I mean, Trudeau's flirting with the idea that trans women are real women. And what is the extrapolation from there? On International Women's Day, he says there are only one woman. It doesn't. If you think you're a woman, you're a woman. Well, how do you extrapolate from there? I would leave that completely alone and say I'm going to let that decision be made by others. If women are allowed to, trans women are allowed to compete in women's sports or allowed to go into the bathrooms or anything like that.
Well, it's not a prime minister.
He wants to flirt around with stuff like that. He should stay away from that and just find out what the farmers need out west to do better
exactly.
crops.
Because that decision is not a prime ministerial decision. It's a decision for other agencies to take into consideration. Right. Well, okay. So Angela said, okay, Mike says, I write questions to people running and weigh my decisions. Right. And it's an interesting way of doing that, Mike. I have written to many, many people, and you know what? Mostly during election time, I get nothing back from them. And usually when it's not election time, I get election hype from them. The Conservatives will do XYZ at the next election if elected to resolve your problem. Trouble is what the XYZ actually doesn't resolve my problem. It means you misinterpreted my question.
Well, I misread it, Mike. I thought, whoa, if I was to run, Mike would have to vote for me because I'll probably weigh more than the other candidates. But I see that was the wrong interpretation of what you said.
Okay, Mike follows that up by saying no answer, no vote. Absolutely 100% understand where you are with that one, Mike. Okay, Angela's going back to something you said. trans should not be an issue. Pierre Poilievre already pushes negative about this, and she further says it's a personal issue.
Well,
I agree.
Well, it sure is, but does Angela want a man walking into a public washroom while she's there because the guy says he's a man or identifies as a man? You see what I mean? I don't think the prime minister or anyone else should really dabble in these fringe issues. Really, I think that they should just get back at running the country at the most efficient way. Unfortunately, politicians are happy to make distractions for you to keep the heat away. You remember when they made the Proud Boys illegal, a terrorist organization in Canada. Meanwhile, the Proud Boys are not a terrorist organization in the United States, despite the fact that they have been convicted. They are not a racist organization, which the liberals like to tell you, because their leader is an Afro-Cuban guy. And there are many black people in the Proud Boys. There were black Canadians in the Proud Boys. And but when the liberals were having a tough time, and so they decided to deflect the issues of the time and make the Proud Boys illegal as a terrorist organization. That was an overreach, and I'm no fan of the Proud Boys, by the way. I don't give a hoot about them, but they but that's what they'll do. They'll get this ideologic foment going. We are against this and we are against that, and this racist organization, and we're going to make it and so everybody gets on board, and the press and everybody, it deflects away from the problems they're having at the time.
Okay, let's look at this. Laurie Parliament says lots of places, including Canadian Tire, are doing co-ed bathrooms anyway. And in fact, actually, we were talking about this with everybody at work, and that's exactly what we're going to do when we move when we move our office downstairs. There are 2 bathrooms. Nominally, at the moment, one is male, one is female. I've said, I think we should make these co-ed. And we should also remove the urinal from the male nominated male bathroom. It's just our office involved, and like, why would we want to be caught short when we just need to go to the bathroom, right? If somebody else is another male's in the male bathroom, hey, I just go next door, do my thing, and get out.
What are you going to do in a stadium? What are you going to do in Maple Leaf Gardens?
That's a different matter. But I think smaller organizations like ours could do that. And shops can do it as well, because in fact, a lot of people don't go to bathrooms in shops anyway. It's literally, I probably, if I'm going in shops, shopping malls, people go to bathroom fairly frequent because they're spending hours in there. Canadian Tire, you're spending, I typically go to the bathroom before I go to Canadian Tire, and it's only in an emergency that I'll end up going to the bathroom in Canadian Tire. I've never been to
the fact of the matter is, you're going to have male and female, and in Niagara College, they got male, female, and other. Basically, to get male, female, and other. Well, like in Nepal, when I was in Nepal, they had male, female, and they had the symbol of a man, right, and the symbol of a woman with a skirt, the triangle. So you had the man straight up and down. The woman had a kind of like a triangle representative of a dress, and then they had one that was half and half male and half female. I've got a picture of it. So they were kind of a little ahead of us. So they had separate washrooms for male, female, and other. So Angela says that's not going to happen, Dave. The Premier of Alberta is willing to breach the charter to interfere with the rights to their identity. I don't know anything about that right now, and Poilievre agreed. I think the identity of trans and all that is
Well,
I don't think it's going to factor into. I don't think it's going
I
to factor
don't
into
know
this
that's
next
gonna.
election. This next
I
election
don't
is
think.
really
Yeah.
based on the average person and the average person and
Well,
how they feel, what
to
they
me,
feel their aspirations are. Are they better or worse than when Trudeau got in?
to
That's what
me,
I think the election's going to be
the
about.
way where we are right now with this next election, I think the one thing that's going to actually feature more than anything else is going to be the state of inflation at the time we get to the election, right? Because the state of inflation and the state of our economy, people are hurting right now, and that's one of the large reasons why why people can't trust the current government. You know, if you
Well,
if,
then
if the price of gas just went up 15 cents, you blame it on the government, even though it might not be the government that's responsible for that.
well, the carbon tax part, yes.
Well, yeah, but you see, we had a 9 cent rise in the carbon tax, and then we had a 15-cent rise in the cost of gas.
Yes. Well, look here. This is the situation. I think pretty much the Liberals have lost the young vote because they can actually go out and say the Conservatives or even the NDP can go and say to the constituents, to the people, are you better off now or in 2015 when the Liberals got in? And universally, everyone will say they were worse off. There are very few people that are better off.
Yeah.
And what was that comment earlier?
Okay. The comment was by Alicia Brown, Alicia Mary, sorry. I can't lie. I've used the men's washroom at a Bills game more than once. The lineup in the women's was way too long. And
that's right. They never make the women's washroom big enough.
Yeah. And yet I've run into the men's room on occasion, says Angela. Yeah, absolutely. Because in fact, actually, the problem, problem, no, it's not problem. The challenge is, and this is what constructors forget, is that women have to sit down. It takes longer, even if a woman is just peeing, to go through the bathroom process. Whereas a man, with a stand-up urinal it makes it a lot quicker.
Look, they never make women washrooms big enough. Never. Right. And like you said before, it's a lot easier making a urinal against the wall and boom, 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 but it's never, they never make women's washrooms big enough. Well, they never make them in enough. And I think that's going to be my election platform.
make bigger women's bathrooms.
I'll capture the women's vote. Right.
Okay. So here's,
if I get in, I will make a law that says women's washrooms have to be twice as big as they are now.
Yeah.
If you've got 10 stalls, they're going to be 20.
Yeah. Okay. So the state of Angela says the state of inflation has nothing to do with the federal government, and she has research to back that statement up. I know that because she
try to convince the electorate. Try to convince the electorate.
Absolutely, yeah. And what I was saying wasn't out of fact, that was out of people's perception there, because that was what I was saying about what people perceive out of at the pump when they're paying for that. Okay, so there are far more normal who can't be bothered to go out and vote at all, but every special will be out to vote for what they want and need. That's an interesting thought these days. And in following that up, Angela says, true, less and less people vote these days at all levels. And yeah, it's true as well.
Basically, it's going to be an anger vote. Well, for one thing, they're fed up with the Liberals, like they were fed up with Harper, and like they were fed up with Chrétien, and etc. And they were fed up with Mulroney before that. It seems to me that government gets in, things like the ArriveCan app are going to weigh heavily on the government on real issues like that. When people talk about real issues. They're going to say, how come the Arrive app cost $55 million when it would have been expensive at $80,000, those kind of things.
Yeah,
Dave should run for PM. See, one election promise, one promise of making the women's washrooms bigger, and I already won the women's vote.
There you go. Dave. Right. When more people do not vote than those that do, should the elections be accepted? That's a fair question. Unfortunately, the thing about it is the elections will be accepted, and the trouble is we'll end up with a situation of elections will still be accepted when there are 5 votes per candidate. Which means the candidate voted for themselves, their party manager voted for them, and their wife or significant other voted for them, and there are 2 other hangers-on that voted for them, and it was a 6 vote to 5 vote victory.
Yeah, well, the thing I think it's going to be an election of anger that the young people who should be the ones that be backing up the Liberals are the ones that are most discontented. They can't afford houses. And when they look at the government policies and see how come we don't have enough doctors, how come we don't have enough houses, and they're going to look at the Liberal policy of immigration, where they brought in a lot of people without planning for where they're going to live or how many doctors or how many medical facilities we could share with them. Yeah. It seems that they didn't think of that. I mean, that is the thing that you should think. We're going to bring in 500,000 people today, but do we have houses for them? Do we have places for them to live? Do we have enough doctors? Do we have enough nurses? Do we have enough medical staff? Do we have enough jobs? All those other things. And then add to that the asylum seekers, and pretty quickly your ideals get start getting watered down.
Okay, and Angela makes the point. The electorate are pretty uneducated. Yes, true. And following that,
I got my grade 11.
Mike Cushman says 50% plus 1 is a true win. Well, okay. So here's the question. So I've got a university education, therefore I should vote and you shouldn't. No, I don't agree. I don't agree with that sort of thing. Absolutely not. Everybody.
You've got a university education, so you're an elitist, so you shouldn't vote.
Well, there you go. There's the alternative viewpoint. I guess. I don't consider myself an elitist. I consider myself just a normal person. Right.
Well, I'm beginning to think of myself as the PM right now because what Angela said. People will pay for their so-called anger that got Trump in the U.S. Well, really, look what they replaced him with, Biden. He doesn't know who he's talking about. He goes around telling people that his uncle is eaten by cannibals. He talks about people, things in places he's never been in. He mixes Mitt around with Angela Merkel, and none of them are even in power anymore. So I'm not so sure. And the guy's a warmonger. Really? Trump is no great help, but I'm not sure Biden is any great of a choice either. The electoral system sucks. This is the problem. I do not like the majority government getting 39% of the vote with 100% of the say. Yes, exactly. And in any time the government, like Dalton McKenty and Trudeau, have both promised some sort of electoral reform, but when they get in, they find if they do apply the electoral reform, they will lose. If Trudeau government applied the electoral reform they were considering back around 2015, they would have lost the last election. So the Poilievre is not going to. Liberals lost a popular vote last time in a big way, in a significant way, and yet they formed the government. Poilievre is not going to do a thing about affordability. He has lived in expensive public housing all his adult life. We'll see. So is
Well,
Trudeau. Trudeau's lived with a silver spoon in his mouth. Jagmeet seems to be quite out of it right now. He has lost the ability to reach people, unfortunately. Trump tells people to drink bleach.
this was actually, to me, this was the worst aspect of the Trump presidency, right? Oh, drink bleach, that'll stop you getting COVID.
Yeah, and then well, I mean, much less headline. Trudeau said that that the budget would pay for itself, the deficit would pay for itself back in 2015.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the same thing as saying drink bleach. Basically, it's just too stupid. The U.S. choices suck too. Yeah, we're in a bad place here. Anyway, Randy says, how can any voter predict in advance what any politician is or is not going to do? That's quite right. They lead their thoughts about the size, what size house a politician grew up in, and that idealism defines the vote against what may be a good politician. Let's put it this way: I would think that everyone who puts themselves up for we've interviewed a few candidates around here in all different aspects of the election. What I do find is people who have the ambition to be an MP or an MPP, but they have an honest feeling that they can make a difference. And they're not going there to make a whole lot of money. They're not going to go there to curry favor here, there, or other. Most of them are going hoping that they can make a difference in a positive way.
Well, that's what I get the impression. I've spoken at length one time with Wayne Gates. That's exactly the way he feels about things. He wants to make a good impression for the people of Niagara Falls, and if you talk to him and you might talk to him about policies, you can say you disagree with something, and he's fine with you disagreeing with him on certain things, right? But he's still passionate about what he believes in. You talk about people like we were talking about Bob Gale yesterday, right? Another person who's passionate about what he believes in. Yes, his beliefs are different to Wayne Gates. We know that. And
that's what makes democracy. Yeah, that's what makes democracy.
Exactly. That's what makes democracy. And again, I spoke with Tony Baldinelli, not Councillor Baldinelli, MP Baldinelli, and he basically is also got very, very interesting views about things, and absolutely. There's no way he was going to be any other politician but a conservative politician. He's very strong on his conservative passion, but again, a person who's passionate about this area.
Well, I'll get back to the original question. When do you think Trudeau's going to drop out of the race? I think Trudeau's 9/11 is going to be around 9/11.
I think he isn't going to drop out the race.
Yeah, well, you could be right, but I think there's going to be a lot of pressure from, if things don't change quickly. They want to regain 5 points in July. If that doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen in August, he's a goner.
Yeah, but you see, again, there's nothing certain. Although, as we stand right now, it is most likely that Poilievre is going to be the next prime minister. There's no absolute certainty in that. In fact, during the election period, once the election is announced, those things tend to tighten back up and tend to favor the party that's in power. So what will happen is the party that's in power will regain 5 or 10% of the polls.
Well, Angela just said that she would prefer to vote for somebody that grew up with modest means. That means Poilievre, because Singh and Trudeau both lived with silver spoons in their mouth. Poilievre's the only guy that had a normal middle class.
Well, that actually basically says to me what Angela's comments there. It says to me, in fact, actually, none of the above is the answer.
Yeah, well, she thinks Trudeau needs to step down. You think he's going to try to hang in very long, but the murmurs in the backbench, the knives are out. Basically, it's going to be at you, Freeland, or at you, someone else, when the knives do finally stab. So if he wants to leave without a legacy, if he wants his legacy to be that he was prime minister when the Liberals got completely vanquished, I don't think he wants that kind of legacy. He'll make a lot more money if he leaves now and then goes on to board of director of this and board of director of that and speaking tours and all that.
Yeah. You know? Okay. So Angela Brown makes the point that Poilievre has families in real estate, and he has held no real jobs prior to being in politics. So he's been in politics all of his adult life, essentially.
Well, tell me the jobs that Trudeau and Singh have had.
Teacher was Trudeau, and Singh was a lawyer. Is a lawyer.
Yeah, but how successful was he? That's what I mean. Like those two were born with silver spoons in the mouth. Yeah. They had upper class, high-end education. Their needs were taken care of. They didn't have to push a broom or turn a wrench.
I don't disagree with you 100%, and I also believe that those people that have come from modest means, and clearly none of our current leaders are in that category, tend to have a bigger ear for what the people want to say.
Well, Randy West says, how does a party replace Trudeau as the next leader comes along to promise to fix what Trudeau has done? That's not how they do it. They come along and they pretend Trudeau didn't even happen, that this is the brand new guy. He's the shining light.
Yeah,
he is the house upon the hill. You know, he's the city upon the hill.
And pray to the new leader, because the new leader is our God.
He has a new vision. Trudeau who? Trudeau who? That kind of thing. So that's how they try to sell it. It's a brand new party, brand new guy. They just put a coat of paint on the whole thing and a little sparklers, but the rubbish is still there underneath. Singh actually grew up poor. Did he? Really? I know that he was abused as a child in karate class. He was sexually abused. I know that. So he has that to as a life experience that can help him. I didn't know that he grew up poor, though.
Well, becoming a lawyer is at least $100,000 in debt to become a lawyer.
Yeah, but I actually thought that he also was a silver spoon guy, that he actually his family had money. But it seems that I'm wrong on that. In any case, Singh doesn't have a chance in hell. He doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell to win.
Yeah, I know. But we were just talking about the top three leaders. That was all. Yeah. Right. I'd like Angela was saying, I'd like to hear from an elected leader that understands and wants equality for people who suffer from disabilities.
Yeah. I'm still predicting Trudeau's 9/11 will be around 9/11.
Okay, we'll see.
Okay, his father was a physician, but had alcohol problems and lost his license a couple of times. Singh helped him out. His brother and him came from immigrant backgrounds. Yeah, but if his father was a physician, he probably still had money. So he would be born. Randy West says the only life issue that Singh can attribute to his resume is his deal with Trudeau that shut down all our ability to control who governs us. Well, they didn't call it a coalition government, but that's actually what it was. They didn't want to call it that, but it was a coalition government in all respects. And that is because Singh knew that if there was an election coming, they may have done worse than even the Liberals did in a non-confidence vote. So what they have done is they've just tightened the spring, And
Yeah.
basically, they've tightened the spring so much that when the election does come, it's going to explode
Well,
conservative.
here's the thing about this is typically in the English speaking lands, we don't like to officially have coalitions. Australia might be a little bit different in this regard, but most English speaking lands, we don't officially have coalitions. Germany, you get an interesting situation whereby sometimes you get the Christian Democrats and Social Democrats that would be diametrically opposed to one another, neither of which have got power on their own, but they form a coalition to govern Germany for a period of time.
Well, look at Italy and Israel. Look at Israel right now. They have the most grotesque fascists involved in the government because they had to make Netanyahu to make a coalition government, and he made a deal with. I mean, he's bad enough himself, but the people he brought in with him, like Smotrich or whatever his name is, and they are, God, they're fascists. They're brutal. They want to wipe out Palestinians. They want to kill them and just expel them. And he had to make, and then, God, imagine that. Would you really have a government? I mean, that's in Italy too. Italy, they've always had that. They have a little bit of stability now, but they have a little bit of stability with a very right-wing prime minister. So I don't know. We're gonna cycle over to conservative probably. In all due respects, I think Trudeau will have to drop out because I don't think it's too little, too late. And even his supporters, his previous supporters, have said that it's too little, too late.
Yeah.
He said he in 2015 he says he's going to build more houses. Didn't do anything. He's running around like a chicken with his head cut off, saying build, and that's because Poilievre pointed that out. And as soon as Poilievre pointed that out, actually Mulcair made a really good point on one of the interviews I saw. He says Trudeau says, well, the federal government's when asked about the housing crisis, Trudeau said federal government really isn't involved in housing. It's more of a provincial thing. Then Poilievre made a big deal about it, and all of a sudden it is a federal thing, and he's running around the country trying to make up. It's too little, too late. The budget was too little, too late. They're trying to catch up. They were blind to the needs of Canadians.
And that is part of the problem that we have with our current system at the moment, is that there tends to be this situation of we're going to do this and that and the other, and when it works, we've got an election in 18 months. Let's change everything. Let's give away a lot of money so that we can buy your vote.
Look, I'm not afraid of the Conservatives. I'm not afraid of the Liberals. I'm not afraid of the NDP. I think the Liberals have come to their natural life cycle, and it's time for them to die off. And the Conservatives will take over, as did Harper, as did Mulroney at different times. So you had, you had Pierre Elliott Trudeau, which gave over to Mulroney, which gave over to Chrétien, which gave over to Harper, which gave over to Trudeau again, which will likely give over to Poilievre. It is a tired, exhausted party that has lost its way. The Liberals, they are corrupt. They are inefficient. The Arrive Can app is emblematic of that, as anyone can see. They just don't know what the right foot doesn't know what the left foot's going. It's just going to change, and that's just the cycle of life. Basically, you're going to get a conservative government. They're going to do their thing. They're going to get thrown out. The Liberals or the NDP will come back in, and they'll do their thing. And that is a good thing overall, I think.
Okay, so here's a good question for you. What chance has the NDP got of making any gains in the next election?
They have to cut into the Liberals. They have to cut in. Unfortunately,
they've cut into them right now.
Yeah, they're going to have to start coming down hard on the Liberals big time, because the NDP did not get exactly everything they wanted with this coalition government they had. They did get a few things like pharmacare and dental, a few other things, but Jagmeet is not going to make up ground in among the conservatives or the moderate liberals. He's going to have to cut into the progressive liberals, and he's going to have to cut hard. He hasn't got a chance.
And let's be honest about it, Jagmeet Singh is no Jack Layton.
No, but he has been subdued because of this deal he's made, and that's part of making a deal with the devil. He has to have been subdued. He can't be too critical of the government. Now is his chance. Once that election is called, he better be ready, and he better be ready to say that we are the real alternatives to the liberals. The liberals are wishy-washy, half conservative, just tell you what you want to hear. We are the real conservative. We are the real alternatives to the conservative, and the liberals should be the third party. We should be one of the primary parties. So that's the deal he has to do. He's got to go after the liberals. He can't be compliant with he has to be critical of the conservative policies, but he's really got to cut into the liberals and make sure that you want a real alternative to the conservatives. We are the ones.
Okay. So, and the Davis cycle is exactly the reason why voters have stopped voting. And Dave's cycle, your cycle.
I suspect that there's going to be a large turnout this next federal election, a really, really large.
I don't think so. I think you're going to get despondency across the board. All right. Okay. So Angela's saying she's disappointed with the Liberals too. They are content to let 3 million people with disabilities live in abject poverty and pretend to help this with this new disability benefit, which basically was a waste of time. Okay, Randy said Singh did make a deal with the devils. Yeah, that's for sure. For sure he did.
Yeah, now he's reaping the consequences of that. Nobody's even talking about Singh anymore. Not even talking about the NDP. And he's probably, if you were to have a beer with any of those guys, you'd probably want to have a beer with Singh because he seems to be like on the level ordinary guy. But the problem is he's got to exert the NDP. He's got to show them as the alternative to the conservatives, not the liberals.
Well, okay. So here's the question for you. So when assuming that we do have an election in 2025 and it's not sooner, the question here is the NDP going to have more seats in Parliament or less?
I hope they have more. I really have.
They will have less.
They may have less, but I hope they have more because I think they really are the alternative to the conservatives. And I'm not dissing the conservatives or liberals or anything like that, but I think the liberals are too wishy-washy that they should actually be the third party, not the primary party. And Angela wishes Jack Layton was still around. Yeah, he had a good way about him, but there was Broadbent and Stephen Lewis. Those were great NDP leaders. I've seen them speak, all of them. And we don't have that right now. And Singh's got to look back and look at that and also get on practical issues. You get the NDP, you think of the NDP that will spend their whole time trying to get a lesbian woman of color, blind, deaf, and dumb as an airline pilot because she has the right to be an airline pilot, and they'll spend half the budget trying to get her to be an airline pilot. You know what I mean? They'll get on these little fringe issues. The NDP has got to get right back to brass tacks. What is the working person doing? How can you help that working person?
Yeah. The problem with voting is that those who need are right there with their handout. Those who are watching our world fall apart have no more interest in stepping up to the polls.
All right.
And he then says less because of Singh's deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Now Singh has to pay for the consequences come for that deal. Did he get enough out of it? Was it good for his party in the long run? He had all that time to build up the power of his party to challenge in the next election. I don't think he's done that well enough.
No.
We haven't seen their platforms yet. We'll have to see.
Well,
But if he was delaying an election by backing up Trudeau, he was delaying a non-confidence vote with hopes of building up the strength of his own party. But I don't think he's done it.
I don't think he's done it. The other question about that is, of course, is the only things the NDP have managed to get in with this was the dentistry issue, and I have to say that that's half-assed because you've got to be 75 plus or a child to get it. He hasn't introduced dental care for the rest of the population.
Well, that's what the Liberals did. They knew they were going to water down anything the NDP wanted. Now, the NDP, Laurie Parliament says the NDP is too affiliated with the Liberals. They don't say what they stand for and seem to have lost their party's identity. Quite right. They will lose votes.
And that's exactly the way I feel about that. Doesn't matter whether, do I believe the NDP has a policy? Absolutely, I do. I'm not talking about whether I agree with said policy. I do believe that the NDP has a policy. It just looks, because of the way that they are attracted to the Liberals right now, attached to the Liberals right now, that they do not. And they're basically just Liberal Party number 2 to the public perception.
They're an auxiliary Liberal Party.
Yeah.
Anyway, I still say, and I'm looking for other opinions, but I think Trudeau's 9/11 will happen around 9/11.
Yeah. Well, nobody here is denying either your or my situation, right? That you're basically saying 9/11. I'm saying goes on to the election, to the stand at the next election as Prime Minister.
The only other date I would propose is Halloween, because that kind of was fitting.
Right. The person who will save us will be the person who can look into the camera and tell you they're putting you on a diet that you won't like, but they will give everything back once they get life. Once we get life under control again, and then the people give them that chance. Interesting question, because essentially that you think, well, that's an impossibility, but actually that is typically what has stood up and made people vote in some instances.
Well, Angela's worried about cutbacks, and Randy's saying we have to have cutbacks. So we have to have cutbacks because we are an obese society. Living off the fat of our future generations. He's saying he's going to have some tough love. You're going to have to cut out some, become affordable if you want to carry on.
And the thing is, I think when we've talked about this morning here has not been favoring one or other political platform, or even criticizing any individual platform. We've just talked about the process, and the platform, how people's platforms run is part of that process.
Well, remember too that
Angela's saying it's hard to tell what Trudeau will do. If the Liberals knew what he was good, for them, J2 will go. Yeah.
Well, remember, when Mulroney was in, he took a complete shellacking. The party was destroyed after he was in, but he is roundly appreciated these days for the NAFTA deal. He is roundly appreciated as the only Western leader that recognized Nelson Mandela. Britain and the United States and Germany and the others were rejecting Nelson Mandela. Not Mulroney. He was a conservative leader, and he welcomed into Canada, gave him a bunch of money. So he is roundly remembered for that now, and he's roundly remembered for NAFTA and other reforms. He was the first prime minister in a generation to make the government pay for itself The government was the actual government was not in deficit when he was in power. He's the first one to reverse that. It went on to the Liberals to reverse it the rest of the way, and then it took the new Liberals to really put it way back into debt zone. So every time you look at a different leader at a different time, I was a conservative one. I remember all the BS about NAFTA and how it was going to destroy the world and our economy. And I remember our unions talking about that. But right now, and yet the next party that got in, the Liberals, were taking credit for NAFTA in speeches in the United States. I remember the Sergio Marchi a speech that he was given in the United States and how he's praising NAFTA and what a great idea it was. But months earlier, he was dissing it as the thing that will destroy Canada, you know?
Well, Randy believes that when are we, ask the question, when are we going to admit that NAFTA killed Canada? I don't agree with that one. In fact, I believe, I'm firmly believe that we actually need a bigger NAFTA, because in fact, actually, Canada's one of the biggest Canadian markets we have is the United States, and and then beyond the United States, that possibility of working with Mexico is also a good thing. But in fact, actually, one of the things that worked for the Europeans for so long was the European Union, because of that free trade that existed within the European Union. That is getting problematic right now. And Angela points out on top of NAFTA, CETA as well, which is the Canadian European Trade Agreement.
Yeah, well, that is really symbolic, because if NAFTA doesn't work, why do they go after CETA? Why do they already trying to pursue free trade agreements all over the world with everyone that would have a free trade agreement with them? Why do we have these political economic unions with the rest of the Anglosphere? I don't know. Canada might have lost a bit of its identity with NAFTA, but in the long run, if you look at the economic benefits of NAFTA, if they're telling us the truth, it is better that we belong to a NAFTA.
Okay.
But I think we got to get out of here anyway. 5 minutes after NAFTA was fun.
So basically, that's what why Randy West is backing up his earlier statement that when are we going to admit that NAFTA killed Canada, right?
Yeah, I do admit stuff like that happened. But it went to in the early days of NAFTA, our industries, lots of them moved out to the United States and Mexico. However, after that, it didn't need NAFTA to move to China. Reams and reams of our industry moved to China, and that had nothing to do with a trade agreement.
That had nothing to do with NAFTA at all. That was purely and simply because you could make a widget that cost $1 to make in the US or Canada for 10 cents in China. So yeah, you went to China.
You can make it for a small bag of rice.
Yeah. Okay. Angela says, and this, we're not going to go any more into this thing about NAFTA. Angela says we also gained industry as well.
According to economists, in the long run, we made more than we lost. We were supposed to lose the wine trade. Remember that? That was a big thing in NAFTA. Yep. Our vintners were going to be destroyed. They're stronger than ever. So we lost industry, but gained. I don't know. I didn't like it because I worked in industry at the time, and I could see it moving out. But then again, more of it moved out in the 2000s, the early 2000s, than ever before.
Yep. All right, there we go. And I think we're going to have to leave it there because we're already well over time.
Okay. My prediction, 9/11 is going to be Trudeau's 9/11.
And my prediction is he'll run on to the next election and probably lose it.
We'll see.
Yeah.
All right. Without further ado, I bid you adieu. Pray for peace. That Gaza thing is way out of hand. Blood everywhere, digging up graves. Hundreds of people dug up, and the world seems to be so insensitive to this. They are misrepresenting the protests at the universities in Colombia and other places as Hamas driven. Netanyahu stick his big nose in and demanded that the United States come down hard on these demonstrators. Mind your own business, BB.